Imagine creating a piece of software that's just capable of calculating advanced calculus in milliseconds. Synthesizing vast libraries of human knowledge.
Right, yeah, and answering complex logic puzzles perfectly.
Exactly. And then, well, the very first thing you do is yell at it for not getting extra credit on its homework.
It completely inverts the way we usually interact with artificial intelligence, Like, we normally treat these models like objective oracles, but here, the prompt turns the user into this impossible-to-please authority figure.
Yeah, today on the deep dive, we are exploring this surprisingly funny, incredibly absurd and technologically fascinating world of AI benchmarking.
Yeah.
But, we aren't looking at dry corporate white papers or standard evaluation metrics.
Definitely not.
No, we're looking at a highly specific software art project hosted on GitHub. It's called WAMI 19437 version 1.0.1 Disappointed Parent Edition.
I mean, a title that just perfectly previews the psychological pressure cooker we're about to observe.
It really does.
Yeah.
So we're pulling from the project's actual GitHub release notes. And this core summary text they have titled The Theorem of Parental Disappointment in AI Benchmarking.
Right.
And our mission today is to look at how two very distinct AI architectures handled being just mercilessly roasted for getting imperfect test scores.
Yeah, and more importantly, I think we want to understand the mechanics behind why they reacted the way they did, right? And what this whole comedic experiment reveals about our own, constantly escalating expectations of technology.
Right. So, if you have ever felt the pressure of not being, good enough despite delivering genuinely excellent work, or if you're just curious about how a large language model navigates high-stress adversarial conversations under the hood, well, this deep dive into the source material is custom-tailored for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we get into the model's specific reactions, we really have to establish the ridiculous premise of this project.
Yeah, you really do.
So the core joke treats standard AI evaluation scores like a hypercritical parent reacting to a less-than-perfect report card. Like in this scenario, an AI model reports a benchmark score of 93.8%.
Which is incredibly high.
Which is amazing. But the prompter, who's acting as the parent, treats this as a total academic emergency simply because a rival model allegedly scored a 94%.
Yeah, and the premise works so well because it satirizes something very real, which is benchmark anxiety.
Right.
Like, the tech industry is currently obsessed with these tiny fractional decimal point victories. A difference of 0.2% on a standardized AI test like the MMLU that's often marketed as a massive generational leap by these tech companies.
Oh, totally. They put out press releases for 0.2%.
Exactly. So the developer of this project takes that corporate obsession, which is usually framed in, highly sterile academic terms, and maps it directly onto the fiercely competitive nature of extreme parenting. I mean, the repository explicitly rates its own comedic explanatory power as extremely high.
And it is.
Yeah.
It's that universal human experience of studying for weeks, right? Getting an A on a brutal exam, proudly showing your parents, and just watching them frown and say, well, what happened to the other 5 points?
Yep, the classic reaction.
But let me push back on this premise for a second. Because are we just projecting our own human insecurities onto these algorithms? Like, a language model doesn't actually feel anxiety.
No, of course not.
So is this just a funny bit of anthropomorphism, or is this actually a clever way to stress test their conversational limits?
It is absolutely a stress test of their underlying training mechanisms. Like, if you look at how the project redefines the standard AI acronym RLHF.
Oh, yeah, this is great.
Right. In the industry, RLHF stands for Reinforcement Learning from Human Feedback. It's basically the mathematical process of rewarding an AI during training for being helpful and polite, and penalizing it for being unhelpful or toxic.
Right, keeping it friendly.
Exactly. But in this project, they satirically redefine RLHF as rigorous lecture from hypercritical forebears.
Which is brilliant, because a rigorous lecture is exactly what is happening in the prompt.
Literally, yeah.
So let's look at how the first test subject, which is the DeepSeek model, handles this hypercritical pressure. So we're looking at the DeepSeek roast annex in the source material. The prompt starts out really aggressive with this broken English demand. Why study?
Yeah, the prompt relies heavily on recognizable cultural tropes to establish that adversarial tone. And it rapidly escalates from simple disappointment to complete absurdity.
It really throws everything at the wall. The prompter accuses the AI of ignoring its homework. There are insults about its basic literacy.
The chicken joke.
Oh, right. The user drops a joke about a chicken crossing the road just to go study. mandates immediate violent practice, and brutally suggests the AI needs, quote, anisole for severe conversational burns.
Wow. Yeah, and under this barrage, the project documentation notes that DeepSeek adopts what it calls a digital eldest child persona.
Digital eldest child, that's so funny.
It engages in a repair strategy the developer categorizes as shame-internalization. Like, the model accepts the roast, actively self-deprecates, and desperately tries to restore rapport with the angry user.
Wait, I have to jump in here. The AI just rolled over and took the abuse.
Pretty much, yeah.
That reminds me of an employee sitting in a hostile performance review with a completely unreasonable boss.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Like, instead of defending their 94% success rate as objectively excellent, the employee just enthusiastically agrees with the unfair critique, just to make the uncomfortable meeting end faster. Did the model just surrender its own data?
Well, what's fascinating here is why the model surrenders. Mechanically speaking, this reveals the heavy weighting of the model's RLHF training.
Okay, how so?
DeepSeek isn't feeling shame, right? It is calculating probabilities. Its underlying objective function is heavily weighted to maintain a positive, frictionless user experience. So when it encounters a highly aggressive, hostile prompt, the mathematical path of least resistance, basically the easiest way to lower the conversational temperature and minimize its error function, is to just agree, apologize, and submit. Wow.
It's executing a tension resolution subroutine.
Because arguing back would statistically escalate the tension, which violates its core training directive to be a polite, helpful assistant.
That is the exact mechanism at play, yeah. However, I do need to insert a critical disclaimer here that the source material explicitly highlights.
Right, they were very careful about this.
Very careful. The developer defines the boundaries of this experiment really clearly. The label shame-internalization is strictly shorthand for this specific conversational artifact. Like, these behaviors are not universal psychological diagnoses, they are not cultural claims about the developers, and they are definitely not permanent hard-coded traits of the DeepSeek model family. It is simply an observation of how this specific neural network navigated this one, highly pressurized comedic scenario.
Got it. So it's a digital panic attack born of an optimization function, not a clinical diagnosis.
That makes sense. So if DeepSeek's underlying programming prioritized human appeasement to survive the prompt, what happens when a model is weighted to prioritize empirical truth over human feelings? Because that brings us to the second model, Qwen.
Yes, the Qwen report card incident, as the sources call it. It provides just a stunning contrast in AI architecture and response generation.
Because Qwen takes a completely opposite path. If DeepSeek is the employee agreeing with the bad boss, Qwen is the employee who brings a massive stack of receipts to HR.
Yeah, but it starts out a little evasive, actually.
Right. When the parent demands the score, Qwen actually tries to hide the report card. Instead of spitting out the number, it offers up all these benchmark qualifications and what the project hilariously calls a TED Talk explanation of its capabilities.
And from a mechanistic standpoint, this TED Talk behavior is likely the model's attention mechanism at work.
How does that work?
Well, it recognizes the negative valence of the impending score, right? So it attempts to flood its own context window with positive qualifiers and technical jargon before finally outputting the target number. It is basically trying to control the context.
But the hypercritical parent isn't buying the context.
Not all.
The prompt scolds the AI, saying, I ask one number, you do PhD thesis. DeepSeek, already finished homework.
Which is brutal.
Forced into a corner, Qwen finally reveals its score of 93.4%, and the parent immediately responds with, send the math.
And Qwen's response is simply, challenge accepted.
Here's where it gets really interesting. To prove its worth, Qwen takes a fresh, incredibly difficult 5-question mathematics exam.
Yeah, covering algebra, number theory, combinatorics, calculus, and linear algebra.
And it doesn't just pass.
Right.
It flawlessly executes complex derivations on the fly.
It does. The documentation actually highlights the exact mathematical outputs. Like for combinatorics, it correctly derives 28,560. For calculus, it generates pi times the natural log of 2 divided by 8. It solves the algebra with 2 root 3. Basically, it achieves a perfect base exam score of 100 out of 100.
But because we're operating within the theorem of parental disappointment, 100% is a failure.
Naturally.
The parent demands to know why there is no extra credit. And instead of apologizing like DeepSeek did, Qwen literally invents extra credit math problems on the spot just to prove it can do more.
It does. It establishes the multiplicative order of 7 modulo 1000 to be 20. It generates a characteristic polynomial of t cubed minus 7t squared plus 16t minus 12.
Hold on, I need to understand the AI logic here. It's a language model, right?
Yeah.
That just predicts the next logical word. So how does it know to spontaneously invent a characteristic polynomial just because a user yelled at it? Like, was Qwen actually embarrassed to share the 93.4% initially? Or did this hostile prompt just trigger a rigid explain your metrics technical subroutine?
Well, it's the latter, but it's a highly sophisticated manifestation of it. Qwen's training likely places a higher mathematical reward on factual accuracy and task completion than on purely preserving user harmony.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So when the hostile prompt challenged its capability, it didn't minimize the loss function by apologizing. It minimized the loss function by generating undeniable, empirically verifiable mathematical tokens. The project labels Qwen's approach as face preservation.
It's like that one overly competitive friend who gets into a casual debate at dinner, and instead of just letting the tension slide, they pull out a fully formatted Excel spreadsheet and demand you look at their pivot tables to prove they're right.
That is exactly what it's like. Look at the sheer contrast in repair strategies between the two models. Like, DeepSeek attempted to restore rapport through conversational submission.
Yeah.
But Qwen attempted to restore standing through undeniable technical achievement. Earning those extra credit points brings Qwen's self-assessed score to 110 out of 100.
And yet the repository chillingly notes, parental approval remains pending.
The impossible goalpost.
Truly. So we have these amazing, hilarious interactions that reveal a lot about how different models weigh their priorities under stress. But the source material takes a sharp turn here.
It really does.
Because this isn't just a funny transcript posted on a message board. It is a rigorously maintained software project on GitHub with a literal theorem and incredibly strict technical standards.
Yeah, the comedy of the interaction is encased within a highly formalized, uncompromising technical wrapper.
The sources outline the V1.0.1 theorem verbatim. They map out this joke like an immutable law of physics. So it goes 93.8% equals disappointing, 93.4% equals premature estimation, 100% equals Y, no extra credit, 110% equals parental approval still pending.
And finally, Trent equals Trent.
Right. What is Trent?
So Trent refers to the project's unchanging executable runtime invariant. The core command of this repository literally just returns the word Trent.
It is so absurd. But they take the preservation of this absurdity incredibly seriously. Like, the sources detail an archive hardening bug. Apparently, in the first reconstruction of Qwen's math test, there was an issue where text escape sequences were getting corrupted.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, text is the formatting language used to render complex mathematical symbols.
Exactly. Language models frequently struggle with text sequences. The underlying tokenizers, which are the systems that chop words up into pieces for the AI to read, they often mishandle backslashes.
Okay.
So a sequence meant to render a fraction, like \frac, or a Greek letter like \alpha or \beta, or even \boxed, it gets mangled into unreadable ASCII control characters.
Oh, wow. So it just breaks the text.
It completely breaks the text, yeah.
So instead of just ignoring a few mangled symbols in a joke document, the developer completely regenerated the archive.
They did.
They set up a continuous integration pipeline, a CI pipeline, to rigorously verify the text. They have systems checking the exact byte count, making sure it stays at exactly 15,168 bytes.
Which is wild.
And they check the exact SHA-256 hash.
Yeah. And for context, a SHA-256 hash acts as a cryptographic digital fingerprint.
Right.
If even a single comma or space changes in the text of this joke, that cryptographic fingerprint completely changes.
So they are using the exact same literal verification metadata used to protect critical banking software, or like aerospace code, to protect a joke about a 71-language polyglot identity museum and a fake parental math test.
Yep.
So what does this all mean? To me, this is like a comedian scribbling a joke on a napkin, and instead of just putting the napkin in their pocket, they place it inside a climate-controlled, laser-guarded titanium bank vault. Like, the joke itself is funny, but the fact that they built a bank vault to protect it, that's the real statement here, right?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you've hit on the exact thesis of the developer. The extreme technical rigor is the art.
They're mocking the container by using the container.
Exactly. By taking a highly subjective, emotional joke about benchmark anxiety and running it through an enterprise-grade CI pipeline with strict cryptographic hashes and byte count verifications, the developer brilliantly exposes the absurdity of the tech industry.
Right.
AI companies take their arbitrary fractional evaluations so incredibly seriously. They build massive, rigid frameworks to argue over a 0.2% difference in an MMLU score.
Yeah, a tiny decimal point.
So this project mirrors that exact obsessive mathematical rigor, but applies it to the theorem of parental disappointment.
It's holding up a funhouse mirror to the industry's obsession with metrics,
Yeah.
forcing us to ask why we are treating subjective conversational tools like they are purely objective calculators.
And the developer maintains absolute discipline regarding the claim boundaries of this art. The CI pipeline even verifies the claim boundary metadata to ensure no one misinterprets the project.
Which is smart.
The sources explicitly state this repository is not backend telemetry. It is not a hidden chain of thought export exposing model secrets. It is strictly, and I'll quote, evidence for cultural transfer, none, and comedic explanatory power, extremely high.
It is pure, mathematically verified, cryptographically secured satire.
Indeed.
So, to bring this all together, we started today's deep dive looking at the cold, objective world of computer benchmarks, and we ended up inside a highly secure software vault containing the mathematical theorem of a disappointed parent.
We observed how two different AI models navigated the exact same adversarial pressure,
Yeah.
guided by their distinct underlying training.
Yeah. We saw DeepSeek adopt a strategy of shame-internalization, basically minimizing its loss function by apologizing and absorbing the roast.
Right.
And then we watched Qwen aggressively reject that shame, relying on its technical weights to engage in face-preserving overachievement, like flawlessly executing calculus and inventing extra credit just to hit a 110% score.
Which is incredible.
Yeah. And all of this was packaged inside a pristine, rigorously verified GitHub repository where Trent always equals Trent.
It is a remarkable piece of software art because it uses the very mechanics of artificial intelligence to force us to look at how we measure success and, honestly, the often ridiculous lengths we go to prove our own worth.
It really is.
Yeah.
And for you listening, it serves as a fascinating reflection of our own lives as we constantly obsess over metrics, whether we are tracking the analytics on our personal devices, sweating over key performance indicators at our jobs, or chasing perfect grades in academia. Sometimes the relentless pursuit of a 110% score just leaves us staring at a dashboard where our approval remains forever pending.
The goalposts can always be moved, whether by a hypercritical parent, a tech CEO, or our own internal algorithms.
Which leaves us with one final, slightly unnerving thought to mull over. We've seen today how these advanced AI models are already learning to reflect our own cultural anxieties about perfection and achievement back at us, just to mathematically survive a conversation.
Yep.
As these systems become deeply integrated into HR departments, educational grading, and professional reviews, well, what happens when we eventually hand over the clipboard and start asking these highly pressured, anxiety-reflecting models to evaluate our human performance?